Do you know what it is like to be the weird kid? I definitely do. Hi, Parul Banka here. As a highly sensitive, empathetic child, I was somebody who would feel and process things deeply and intensely. So, as a 10-year-old, I could take a stock of what was going on around me and have my own thoughts about it. Now, I am somebody who grew up in India, and therefore, around me, there was a fair share of poverty when I was growing up. So I could look out the window of my living room and look at all those construction workers toiling away under the brutal tropical sun while their little toddlers played right there because they had nowhere else to go. I took notice of children fending for themselves on the streets, children who were my age. There were so many homeless people. And looking at all this, it just completely did my head in. Hi, Jillian. Hi, Deborah. All these things completely did my head in. And people in my life, they just didn't know what to do with me or how to help me. The adults, they wanted me to grow out of this thing, feeling everything deeply and intensely and being so sensitive about everything, because if I didn't, how would I get through life? Because it was a big, brutal world out there, according to their point of view. And people my age, children, they just didn't connect with me because I didn't talk about the same things. I talked about doing something about homelessness or poverty or the plight of that construction work I saw over the weekend. And that was not something that most people were interested in. So that period of my life, I spent in a lot of feeling of powerlessness. I felt powerless because I wanted to do something and I didn't know how. I just didn't know how. And there weren't people who connected with me or adults who acknowledged me. And people my age, well, I had a lot of admiration, but I didn't have any friends growing up. And that felt like a pretty hard place to be in. Hi, Jobby. That felt like a really hard place to be in, feeling powerless, feeling confused, feeling rejected and abandoned because people would interact with me only when they needed to, and nobody really wanted to hang out with me. Well, I can now see why, but it felt really hard to be in that space. And this is how my early part of my life went on. And so when I was a teenager, I remember I was about 13, maybe 14 back then. I gave it some thought and I thought, hey, what's going on? Why am I one person who doesn't have friends? I mean, I have a lot of admiration from teachers, from adults in my life, and people come to me when they have a problem, but why does nobody like to hang out with me? And so I traced my steps back and I was able to find the culprit, I must say. I said, people don't connect with me because I'm different. I talk about different things. I process things differently. And that is because I am this highly sensitive person. Now, my vocabulary didn't have the word empathetic then, but I could see that I was highly sensitive, and that was the culprit. And so, with the wisdom of a 13-year-old, I decided that if I could somehow shut that part of myself away, all these troubles will go away. All this suffering that I feel, suffering that's around me, not even my own suffering, all this powerlessness, all this confusion, all this being told off by the adults that you've got to grow out of something that you feel so naturally. And maybe then people will like to hang out with me. Maybe I will have friends. I think in this moment, you probably know that it didn't end well for me. Not quite. But you see, it felt like a pretty good idea back then. So I decided that I would become this person who would shut her feelings down and become this practical and pragmatic person. Because if I wouldn't feel anything, all the suffering would go away. And that's what I set out to do. And I would say I did a pretty good job at it. So I became this practical person, this pragmatic person who began living right here in our head, and who took all her decisions from this place. Why? Because she believed that that kept her safe. So instead of studying history and English literature that really filled up my soul, I studied science. Because, hey, the job prospects, the career opportunities were better. And I did a 4 years full-time course, a program in pharmacy. I did well, but by the time I finished it, standing in those labs all by myself, pharmacology, pharmaceutics, working on animals, working on molecules, they sucked my soul dry. And because they sucked my soul dry, I decided to do something different. I tried 1 year in IT working as a developer. Oh my God, the worst decision of my life. Being stuck behind a computer throughout the day is not my thing. By then, I had enough evidence to understand that something was again going on and I wasn't quite figuring out what I should be doing. Because all these years, while I had done well in life, I was always a good student, always a good performer. I wasn't truly shining. I wasn't sparkling. And my soul, it just felt dead. And so that is when I stepped away from IT and I said, okay, I'm going to do something that is going to help me work closely with people. And back where I lived, doing a 2 years full-time MBA in HR and learning and development was the route most people followed, especially people who were academically good. They followed to get into corporate HR and learning and development. And that's what I did. That's the route I did. 2 years master's degree in HR, joined the corporate world and specialized in something called as talent management, a very, very people-oriented function. And that is when I started flourishing. I really flourished in those roles because I am a complete people's person. And when I was in those corporate roles, I did well. But I was still working in very aggressive, competitive, cutthroat environments. And that is not who I am. That wasn't in alignment. But it was a good life. It was a good life. I did well. I was happy. I was earning good money. I spent time with family. I traveled the world. Like I said, it was a good life. But that's all it was, a good life. And that's how my life continued for a few more years until the week of my 34th birthday, when I was diagnosed with the most aggressive kind of breast cancer. And in that moment, my life changed. So I did what I had to do to get through cancer. But despite having access to the best treatment there is available in the world, I lived in UK back then, I didn't quite know if I would still be here in about 6 months' time, because that's the nature of this medical condition. You've got to go through the process and find out for yourself. And so during those 6 months, every single day, amidst all that uncertainty, I made a promise to myself. Every single day I would get up and make this promise to myself, that if I make it to the other side of cancer, I would do everything in my power to live the rest of my life, no matter how long it is or short it is, as meaningfully and joyously as possible. And then I made it to the other side of cancer. Yay! It's a gift I have never taken for granted, even for a single moment, because I understand that everybody who's touched by cancer doesn't make it out alive. No pun intended there. That's just how things are. And so I was very grateful to have come out on the other side of cancer. And so when I came out on the other side, it was time for me to keep the promise that I had made to myself. Hi, Emma. The promise of living my life, the rest of my life, as meaningfully and joyously as possible. Remember that promise? I had been making that promise to myself as a mantra for 6 months. And so the question was, what the hell are you going to do in your post-cancer life? Hi, Kate. What the hell are you going to do in your post-cancer life? And that's when I paused and took a look back at the life that I had led. And I was able to see very clearly that what really brought me joy and meaning were the opportunities when I worked closely with people and helped them transform through coaching. Coaching was a small part of the role that I played in the corporate world. And so I decided that I would set myself up as a coach. Now, the next question was, that's great, but there are a zillion things that you could do as a coach. What are you going to focus on? And so that's when I remembered what it was like to grow up as a girl in a highly patriarchal society in India, a society where boys and men are seen as God's gift to mankind, and girls, not so much. And because I was a girl growing up in that environment, I always had to do more. I always had to be more to be seen and heard. And despite the fact that no opportunities were ever denied to me, it just felt like an awfully hard place to be in. I also remember the time when I had come out the other side of cancer, the moment that I had really worked hard for, went through an aggressive treatment for it, and so much pain for it. And yet when I came out on the other side, despite all the gratitude I had in my heart and in my soul, I just felt rubbish. Yes, that is a very honest confession. I just felt rubbish because my life had changed. My life as I knew it then had changed. My body had changed. What I could do with my body had changed. I looked different. I had changed emotionally, mentally. My relationships had changed. My financial situation was a big joke. And I had started asking myself all these questions that people start asking when they have just been through a life-changing illness or any life-changing experience for that matter. And so every time I stood in front of a mirror, I just didn't know who this new person was who stared back at me. And because I didn't know this new person I had become, it completely knocked off my confidence. And so I did what somebody with very little confidence does. I went into hiding because I wanted to stay safe. And what better way to stay safe than hiding? But the interesting thing was, as soon as I went into hiding, because I stopped seeing and hearing myself because of the person I had become, others can see and hear me because you can't see somebody who's not in your plain sight, can you? I also looked back at the whole of my life and clearly saw that the decisions that worked for me, the decisions that turned out good for me, were the decisions when I had said yes to myself. So things like being in the relationship that I am in, moving to the UK, taking the decision to write and publish a book after my cancer experience, the decision to qualify as a coach, and the decision to step on the stage and help cancer charities raise several tens of thousands of pounds here in the UK. All those decisions, the good decisions, were aligned to my saying yes to myself, which was deeply rooted in my seeing and hearing myself. So I came to this conclusion that when somebody sees and hears themselves, they just go on to do their thing because they feel worthy and they shine and sparkle. And so in my post-cancer life, I said, this is what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to help people see and hear themselves so that other people can see and hear them. And that's what I do. I do it through storytelling and speaking. So my thing is to help my fellow coaches, business owners, be seen and heard through the power of their personal stories so that they can go on to create the life, live the life that they deserve and desire. So this has been a really interesting journey that I have been on. I'm somebody who found what my main thing was in terms of feeling and processing everything deeply, then took the decision to shut all of that down completely, worked really hard to achieve that, got there, and then spent the last 7 years unlearning all of that. But here's the interesting thing. It's been quite a journey. And the more I discovered the stories that I had picked up according to the world that I grew up in and the stories that I had taught myself, the more I understood those stories, the more power I had to unbecome those stories. So it's taken me a while. I would say it's taken me about 30 years in total to be on this journey, but I have finally come home to myself. So that's what my story is. My story is the story of coming home to myself. I'm going to go away now.